I am Mohit Raj, and my research title is Assessing Dataset Requirement for Transfer Learning, a Case of Magahi. Uh, Here are the main topics that I am going to talk in these sessions. The first is a transfer learning, where we talk what is the transfer learning and how to implement it, and the status and the information and some factual information about Maghi, and also talk about the what is the language resources and technology in Maghi available to do in order to prepare in order to make rich resource for Maghi languages, and also talk about the previous work related to transfer learning, and then talk about how I prepared my data set to do the experiment, and further I will talk how I perform the how I perform the experiment, how I do the transfer learning to assess the data set, and then talk about the results and conclude with the thing. The first is the transfer learning. The transfer learning is a technique that is used in a machine learning. The idea is to since to train a model a specific task like token classification, sentiment analysis, summarization. It is a very hard to label the data, and it is a very costly and time taking. So the idea is to first to train the model on a huge data set in through the unsupervised learning, and then transfer that trained use that trained model to do some related and specific task with the fine tuning just a top layer of a model. So the first is, this is the transfer learning, and the second is the model training on huge data set and learn to knowledge. So there are in these days we have seen a lot of model is used to do this task, that is like BERT and DistilBERT, GPT, Mural. Then a lot of model is going on day by day to do this task. So here is some factual information about Maghi. The language family of Magahi belongs to Indo-Aryan language, and it is spoken in eastern state of India, namely Bihar, and also spoken in some parts of Bengal, Orissa, and Jharkhand. The wonderful and the others, the linguistics research, some linguistics research also happen in Maghi. These are some of the basic description of Maghi is given by Sila Verma, and the description of Maghi case system given by Bornini Larry, the discussion on a Maghi on-graphic system within a minimalist framework, and the morphemic syntactic properties of nominal particles, the study on Maghi spatial postposition. These are some core linguistic research that is happen in Maghi. Since Maghi since Maghi comes in the Hindi belt zone, so-called Hindi belt zone, so the towards the Hindi there as a negligence of government supervision, and also generate some negative attitude towards the Maghi language. So, but despite this odd situation, there are notable work happen to develop the language resource and technology in Maghi, and in this research is also the part of that thing. So these are some notable works that is available in Maghi. The first is the development of monolingual written and speech corpora. The second is the Maghi parts of speech tagger, and the Maghi language identification system. Magahi analyzer and generator, and the machine translation system for English to Magahi that is recently developed by Soumitra Yadav. It belongs to Triple IT Hyderabad. These are some previous work related to transfer learning. The first I want to talk I want to talk about BERT. BERT is a language representation model, and it is stands for a bidirectional encoder representation from transformer. Previous NLP model is trained on unidirectional way. That means it use the information or context from one direction, either or left, either or right. But when BERT came into the field of NLP, using attention mechanism is BERT is designed in a such way to train a deep neural network taking the input from both sides, from left and the right. The idea is, and it is tested on two tasks. The first is masked language modeling, and the other is sentence generation task. Other is a robota. Robota is it is a kind of a bird, but it is a robustly optimized. And what they do, they just replace the bird to measure the impact of many key hyperparameters. These are the second task that is robustly optimized to find what is the effect of a hyperparameter that is used during the training the model, and it shows that the hyperparameter choices has a significant impact on a results. Other one is a distill bird. Since BERT is a very huge and time taking and very costly, so the idea of distill BERT is to reduce the size, and it is the small version. It is the small version of BERT that is it is 40% reduced the original BERT model, and while training it achieve a 97% of language understanding capability and being 60% faster. So it can be said that the distilled words is give a results comparable with the word, but in 60% faster, and remaining the 97% their performance. Other one is Albert. It is a light word for a self-supervised learning of language representation, and the purpose is to parameter reduction techniques. There is a huge number of parameters that is going in BERT. So Albert is a proposed technique in which it reduces the number of parameters to solve the problems of memory limitation, because to train such type of deep learning model, it takes huge amount of memory, and it's create the issue with GPU and TPU memory problems. So they still Albert is introduced to tackle the problem of GPU and TPU memory limitation with comparable results of BERT. Uh, like so for my experiment I have used two datasets. The first is Hindi and the Magahi. The Hindi dataset I have collected it from Hindi tree bank, and that is the number of sentences is 16,492, and here the U post distribution and the tag that Hindi tree bank is prepared according to Universal Tree Bank framework, in which for the UPOS information they use the UPOS tag set. Here are the UPOS distribution of noun, verb, and other grammatical categories. The data shows that the large proportion of data is noun, and then add position 21.3%, and then proper noun 12.3%. This is the my Magahi dataset. To prepare the Magahi dataset, I have taken the data that is the part of monolingual corpus, and and taken that data, and I have annotated that data using universal framework and use the UPOS tag set. That is the I have tagged 945 sentences in which these are the statistics of UPOS distribution, and the data has 24% noun, and then the verb is 22.8%, and then add positions. Going to experiment, I just want to say about why I use Hindi and Maghi for my experiment. There are a lot of lemma shared with the Hindi and with the a lot of share a lot of lemma of Hindi shared with the Maghi language. Also, Maghi also shared some grammatical and typological property with the Hindi language. So the idea is to use Hindi language model or Hindi representation model to do task for Maghi, and I have used only one only one downstream task, post tagging, using the Hindi models. So to do my experiment, I have used two transformer based pre-trained models. The first is BERT and the distill BERT. These two are multilingual model that is trained in more than 100 languages, including Hindi. But these models are not trained on Maghi or Maghi level data. So here, uh, BERT and distill BERT is trained on a general, huge data set to generalize the features of language, and to the data processing. First, here the idea is to train that language and fine tune for the downstream task, post tagging. So to do the fine tuning, I have just unfreeze the top layer of models and fine tune for that. The first to do the my experiment, the experiment go with the ID assignment and the tokenization. To first ID assignment is assign the tag, assign the number, assign the ID to each tag of data, either of a Maghi or either of the Hindi, and the further it goes with the tokenization. In the tokenization, we pass the data set and encode the language according to model. That this tokenization process is different for BERT and distill BERT, but it takes the data and encode. I have take the data and encode the data according to requirement of model and then pass to training. I have used these parameters to fine tune the models. Yeah, I have keep the epochs 3 training and evaluation batch size 16 and the warm up steps 500. So after training, these are my results. I have done 8 kinds of experiment in which I have used two model BERT and distill BERT. In the BERT, I have used Hindi data for training and also testing for Hindi, and these are evaluation loss, the 0.089, and the second is same train the model on Hindi but test the model on Maghi dataset, and these are evaluation loss 5.994, and then I have trained the data on Maghi and test again on Maghi, and these are the this is the loss 2.130, and again used mixed language. I have mixed those languages and build a combined data set and then pass for training and testing and get the evaluation set 2.131, and these same things I have performed with the distill BERT to check which model is better to these 945 for the 945 sentences of Maghi, which one is good for the token classification task of Maghi, and conclusively here as the result, and the experiment shows that distill but outperform BERT on three kinds of experiment for downstream task post tagging. When the model is trained on Hindi and tested on Maghi, here the data is like here the BERT result is 5.994, that is trained on Hindi but test on Maghi, and result is 5 point evaluation loss is 5.994, but in distill but it is 4.956. So here the distill but outperform the BERT for the task when training is on Hindi but testing on Maghi. The second is when the model is trained on Maghi and tested on Maghi. So when we use two model, BERT and distill BERTs, here the again distill BERTs outperform the BERT when the training data is Maghi and testing data is also a Maghi. Here the for BERT it is a 2.13 and for Maghi it is a 2.12. So there is a little difference, but with the little margin, distill BERT outperform the Maghi. And also for the distill BERT also outperform the BERT for mixed data set when we pass the Hindi and Maghi mixed data set to do the experiments. So these are references. Thank you everyone to listening me.
Hi Mohit, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I think I'm not a computational linguist, so I'm going to ask a very rudimentary question. I'm working with historical language corpora, and that too only monolingual language. So this whole concept of training the model in a different language and then testing in a different language, I would like to know more about that. What does that mean? Like you're training it in Indian, testing in Magahi, and then I would like to know what is that if nobody has any other question, that is. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay. The idea is I have is there is a huge amount of lemma that is also in Hindi and also in Maghi, and these the model distill BERT and BERT take the huge amount of data. Even every deep neural network model take a huge amount of data to train on from the scratch. So it is since we have already told that the Maghi is a low resource and it is not a huge amount of data for label data for Maghi. So idea is to use the Hindi pre-trained model and test it on the Maghi dataset how the performance of model for that Maghi token classification, because the Hindi shares with the some lemma and also share some typological and grammatical property with the Maghi. That is the idea.
Okay, so is it for error correction? Is it so that you can see how the languages fare in that model? Is that the idea?
No, it's I think it is just to check how the Hindi pre-trained model work for Maghi languages.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.